Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back for more conversations. Our show is about longevity. In 1940, the year I was born, the average life expectancy for men in America was 60.8 years. For women, 65.2. This year, 2026, the averages hit an all-time high. The life expectancy for men was 76.5 years. For women, 81.4. Michael Clinton is with us. He has written a fascinating book entitled Longevity Nation, in which he argues that times have changed and the average American child born this year has a good chance to live to 100 and remain healthy. Living to 100 or beyond, he says, will become the new normal. To write the book, Michael crisscrossed the globe, interviewing scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs, communities, and healthcare professionals in the field of longevity to determine what have been the latest advances and what is the outlook for the future. His book reveals what has happened, what is happening now, and what is trending. Michael earned his stripes over 40 years in the New York media world, spending 10 years as president and publishing director of Hearst magazines. To prove his case for longevity, he has run 7 marathons in 7 countries. There are many myths about the Fountain of Youth, a mythical spring which supposedly restores the youth of anyone who drinks or bathes in its waters. Tales of such a fountain have been recounted around the world for thousands of years. Michael may have in some sense found the key to it all. We're pleased to welcome Michael Clinton to the program.
Jim, thanks for having me. What a great topic, and I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Michael, it is a topic that everyone is interested in.
Yeah.
But not everyone is so interested that they write a book about it. So tell us how you came to the topic and what you learned from your research.
You know, one of the reasons that I started this journey was when I was around 65 and I was sort of ready to step out of my day-to-day role at Hearst. People would say to me, "Oh, you're going to retire?" And I'd say, "Well, not really. I'm going to step out of this job and I'm going to do a lot of other things." And when I stepped back and started learning what was happening in the world because of the developments in medicine and technology and lifestyle, if you're 65 today and healthy, you're probably going to live another 30 years. So you need to have purpose or more. You need to have purpose, you need to have engagement, you need to, in our language, rewire in terms of what might be next for you. So I became very interested in the whole longevity phenomena. It led to a first book called Roar, Into the Second Half of Your Life. I ended up joining the Stanford University Center on Longevity. And so I've been on this path for a few years, really meeting the global experts and what I call the longevity innovators who are helping to create the roadmap for all of us.
So to retire is to expire.
To retire is to expire.
And now, are there downsides, societal downsides to people living longer?
Well, sure. I mean, you know, not everyone is created equal, obviously, in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds and access to good health care. But the data is that only about 25% of our genes determine our own individual longevity. That means 75% of our abilities to control our health span, a long lifespan, are in our hands. And there's some really simple things that anyone can do regardless of their background. And one of those is movement, the simple act of movement, which is the natural medicine. And we can get into what I call the longevity protocols, but those are sort of available to everyone.
Well, the statistics that I recited at the outset are kind of startling. And why are people living so much longer, particularly after the turn of this century? They began to soar.
Yeah.
What accounts for that?
Yeah, I mean, life expectancy has grown globally in the last 100 years more than any time in all of the combined history before. What created that? Nutrition, clean water, cleaned up sewage in cities, vaccinations, better workplace environments, and all of those sort of coming together sort of led us to this path of this idea of longer life expectancies. And I think in 1940, you stated men 60.8. You know, in 1940, if you said to people, everyone's going to live to be 80-ish, people would say, well, that's kind of far out. So today, when we say everybody, you know, is going to live to be 100, it's not so far out. the stats are pretty compelling in terms of how many people are living well into their 80s, 90s, and 100. So yeah.
What about medical advances? What have been the most dramatic, say, since 1940, or even more recent?
Right. Well, certainly vaccinations, have been very. But the real amazing thing that is happening right now, I call it medicine meets technology meets AI. And if you look at the diagnostics that are now available to us, our whole system is reacting to an illness when you get diagnosed. Now there are so many tests and diagnostics that can get you information about your own biology early in. All the biomarkers, all of the wearables that can track your metrics, the amazing things if you take the Alzheimer's gene test. There are now 2 FDA drugs to slow down the process of Alzheimer's, and there are 140 drugs in the pipeline, all being aided by technology and by AI. So you're seeing a lot of diagnostics emerge. You're also seeing an incredible new class of drugs emerging for all of us to live longer, healthier lives. Everything from the miracle drug of GLP-1, which you're familiar with, Ozempic and Zepbound and all of those drugs. We're now seeing doctors. Wegovy, yeah, there are many of them and many more coming. And doctors will say that it's really the longevity drug of our lives because it reduces inflammation, better cardiovascular, which as you know is the #1 killer for people as they live longer. Also better organ function. So some doctors say, one of our partners is Weill Cornell Medicine at our company that we create around longevity, that this drug will all be on some form of GLP-1, not for weight loss, but for the other elements. And lots of other new drugs like metformin and the senolytics. So all of this is being created by technology and AI. We're in a golden age of new kinds of medical advances and breakthroughs.
And advances in surgery?
Surgery, let's put robotics aside for a moment. But, when you think about
lasers.
All of the, exactly, when you think about all of the things that are happening for precision medicine and precision techniques that are lined up with your own biology. Jim, there's a thing, I don't know if you know about the digital twin. So the digital twin is going to be...
Tell us about the digital twin.
So the digital twin is, if you have some set of, biological medical issues, and precision medicine is going to be targeted to you individually based on your profile and trillions of data that is collected through AI around the world. And they're going to say, okay, Jim and Michael may have the same issues, but Jim's going to be treated differently. So they're going to test those drugs on your digital twin, which is a biological digital twin of who you are. And if that all checks out, they'll then give you the medication. So it sounds like a sci-fi kind of thing, but it's already emerging and real. So it's pretty awesome. It's pretty incredible what's happening.
Now, is that done at these longevity centers? There are a number of longevity centers that are arising at hospitals, including New York Presbyterian.
Yeah, there are about 1,000 longevity clinics and centers around the world now, and growing. Many of them say they are disrupting the traditional medical establishment for a whole host of reasons in terms of what they offer in their offerings. Not all of them are created equal. You have to really make sure they're science-based and evidence-based. Weill Cornell just opened the first big one here in New York on 53rd and Lexington, which is really the first hospital complex to have a longevity center as part of their hospital. And as you know, Presby is all part of that network. So it's pretty exciting, and you're going to see it's happening in lots of other countries around the world, in Singapore and Tel Aviv and lots of other cities that are opening longevity clinics and centers within hospital complexes. And to me, that's the right approach.
So what happens at the longevity center? I mean, I check in and I have nothing in particular wrong with me,
right.
But I say I'm 86 years old, and they say,
let's check you out.
Let's check you out.
It's a subscription model. It's really an interesting model. You go in, they have doctors and nurses, but they also have a lot of what I'll call health aides around. You can have biomarkers done, blood tests done. If you believe in cryotherapy, you can have cryotherapy done. You can have ice baths. You can have lots of other components. Some of them aren't scientifically proven yet, but it may make you feel better. It's like a massage. If it makes you feel better, why not? But they do have all of the clinical testing. And what's interesting, I wrote a story for Men's Health magazine on this subject, Jim. It was called The Rise of Longevity Clinics. Younger people are spending a lot of time going there because they get fuller access. It's not a 15-minute meeting with a primary care physician. They can go often. They get consultations on nutrition and fitness. And it's sort of captured the younger generation in a way that's very interesting, which is, I think, why hospitals are really paying attention to this trend.
So they're targeting aging rather than disease,
Correct.
per se.
Correct. And as you know, there's no cure for aging per se, but there are diseases that are aligned with aging. You know, we talked about cardiovascular as one of those. So
I ran into Gary Player, the golfer.
Oh, yeah.
And he's in his 90s, and he told me every morning he takes an ice bath.
There you go.
I find an ice bath terrifying.
Yeah, me too. But if it works for him. You know what's interesting, though? We have in the world today about 770,000 centenarians. You know, the people who are 100 or older. The oldest person to ever live was 122. At Harvard, Dr. David Sinclair has stated that the first person to live to be 150 has been born. Who knows? But the UN projects by 2100, there'll be 25 million people who will be 100 or older. Now, you and I may get there, but the next generations, because of medicine and technology and the things we've been talking about, many of the studies, including one at Stanford, is that today's 5-year-old has a 50% chance to live to be 100. So hence, it's going to become more and more normalized.
Now, women, God bless them, why is it they live longer than men?
They do. You know, it's 5 to 6 years longer. It's been interesting. I've asked a lot of scientists and doctors, and you know, the Buck Institute, which is one of the premier research centers in the country, Dr. Eric Verdin, who I interviewed for the book, is really an amazing individual on the topic. No one really quite knows why. I've not been able to get a consistent answer, but it is true that, you know, women biologically live 5 to 6 years longer than men.
What would you say are the best strategies for a longer life? You said that one portion is, of course, your genetics. You say that's a minor portion relative to what you can do to help yourself.
Yeah.
What can I do to help myself?
You know, the core 5 longevity protocols, we call it. And, you know, in all the research I did and all the people I talked to, the number one thing is this idea of movement and this idea of exercise every single day until your last day on Earth. And we all know the stories of those people who become sedentary and then they fall or they lose their mobility, and then it's all kind of a spiral down. So mobility.
Linus Pauling in his 90s was asked the secret of his longevity, and he said handrails.
And grip.
And grip.
Yeah. A really important part of it. Balance, mobility, strength, hand grip, general strength, rotation of making sure you're doing aerobic and weights. It is really the natural medicine that everyone will tell you is something you need to do every day. Pick your thing. It doesn't. I'm a runner. I'm a marathon runner, as you mentioned. That's not what you have to do. Just make sure you go out there and moving. So
they talk about steps.
Yeah.
Should do 10,000 steps a day. Do I need to do 10,000 steps?
Some of the research, you know, is that yes, but maybe 7,000 will do the trick. You know what's so interesting is we live in this world where a new study comes out every other week, right, and tells us do this, don't do that, try this, don't try that. But we follow the medicine, we follow the clinical trials, we follow the longitudinal studies as they exist. And I think steps, walking is a great way to, and I count my steps with my Oura Ring, and many have their Apple Watch or their Whoop, and I think we should all pay attention to that metric in some way, shape, or form. So that's numero uno, is this idea of movement every day. You know, it's hard to build a new habit, you know, at any time in life, but the importance of doing it, especially in the second half of life, is critical.
And what about stretching and yoga and Pilates?
All good. all good. It helps with balance. It helps with mobility. You know, pick what you love, and you know, do that as a routine and a habit. But yeah, every day, some portion of your day.
Okay. Now, what about diet? Is diet a factor?
So the second protocol, what we eat, what we put in our mouths. You know, we were raised in a country where there was a lot of processed foods and a lot of ultra-processed foods. So how do we pivot more to high protein, plant-based? Doctors will say meat should be an appetizer. I personally haven't eaten meat in 50 years. That's my own choice, but less meat consumption, more protein consumption, beans as a core, beans and legumes as a core diet. You're probably familiar with the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. And I interviewed a great guy who created the longevity diet, which is a lot of these components. Obviously, no smoking. You know, I always say what you put in your mouth. No smoking, no drugs, no moderate alcohol, because there's a.
Well, what about moderate alcohol?
Well,
there's a controversy about that. I read that in the Biden years, they concluded you should stop entirely, or maybe just have one a day.
Well, exactly.
Now, Trump says you can have as many as you want.
So, you know.
And he doesn't drink.
Right. This study says you can have 14 a week. This study says you can have 7 a week. This study says you can't have any. I think, you know, what I found in my research is it has to do with your other comorbidities. If you have a lot of health issues, first of all, alcohol is not going to be good for you. If you're a healthy human being, in moderation is what a lot of people will say, and it's all about moderation. And there's also a social and community aspect to drinking, having a glass of wine with a meal with your family or friends. So, you know, I'm a moderate drinker. I only drink wine. I don't drink hard liquor. Occasional margarita, but I'll drink 5 glasses of wine a week at dinner, and pay attention to it. So I think it's really about moderation and your own personal biology. So that's a lot of what I heard in talking to people.
Well, you know the story about Queen Mother Elizabeth. When she was 85, the royal doctor said to her, Queen Mum, you have to stop drinking. And she had a special relationship with alcohol. And she said, why should I stop drinking? She said, tomorrow I might go under a red bus. And he said to her, well, Queen Mum, there's very little I can guarantee you. I'm a doctor and we don't make guarantees, but I can almost guarantee you that tomorrow you will not go into a red bus.
That's probably
and
true.
she said, but suppose I do. I don't want to think I didn't have a drink last night.
Well, you hear these stories about, these 100-year-olds that say, oh yeah, I've been drinking every day of my life for 50 years. But I think with what we know now with medicine, we do know that how our biology responds and reacts to things. So food, plant-based, high protein, that kind of stuff.
Sleep?
Sleep, next big one.
How many hours should I sleep?
So the new research is saying if you have good REM sleep and deep sleep, 6.5 to 7.
REM, what's REM?
REM is when you go into your deepest sleep cycle. And, if you're sleeping 9 hours a night, but you're not getting REM or deep sleep, then you are not getting the kind of sleep that you need to clean out your brain and the garbage in your brain, as you know. And sleep hygiene is important. So what I've heard now and read and researched with all of these interviews is if you're getting good REM and deep sleep, 6.5 to 7.5 hours, maybe perfectly fine. Pharmaceuticals to sleep aren't great. They really disrupt your REM and your deep sleep. And if you have a wearable, like an Oura Ring or a watch, and I would recommend that for everyone because I think it gives us signals about our heart rate and our respiratory oxygen levels and our sleep patterns and all of those things. And it's indicative. It's not perfect, but it's indicative so that you can see your trend line. And at Esquire, one of the magazines we have at Hearst, there was just a story that a guy wrote called How My Oura Ring Saved My Life. He kept getting signals from the Oura Ring that there was something wrong with him, and his wife convinced him to go to the doctor, and in fact, they found something they had to deal with. So it's an indicative, it's a moderator of your health metrics, and I think it's really an important, it's important for everyone to have that in today's world.
Another aspect is the psychological aspect of having a sense of purpose,
Right.
perhaps looking forward to things.
Right.
David Rockefeller lived to 101, and I saw him shortly before his death, and he was talking about a trip he was planning to take.
Fantastic.
So is that an important thing, to be
Yeah.
looking forward and having
Yeah. Purpose.
a sense of purpose?
Yeah, I mean, this is the rewire that we talk about. You know, many people, you know, I like to say 65 is no longer the number. You know, and I wrote a piece for Esquire. That was actually the headlines. Why 65 is no longer the number. We were wired to say, okay, 65, you kind of check out of a career. You know, I'm generalizing here. And then you'll pardon the expression, move to Florida and play golf. Well, that worked great when you didn't live much longer and you lived a few years. But if you're going to live another 30 years, you have to have other things that get you up in the morning. You know, stay engaged, find your passions, reclaim something from your earlier life, start a business, launch a new career if you want. You know, you can do it for 10 years. We really are living in a wonderful time where we have so much opportunity, and we're really creating the role models for the next generations when they realize that they are going to live to be 90 or older, and how they're going to live, what's it going to look like. So purpose is really important, part of the human condition.
There's one other aspect, and that's the concept of age and place, as opposed to go into a nursing home or go into assisted living. And it was a wonderful story in the Washington Post, you probably saw it, about two sisters who constructed a house where they had separate residences. One was married, one was not, but they communicated, they were connected. Is that become an alternative for many people, where they plan for a caregiver perhaps on the premises, where they plan for an elevator, and they can remain at home, basically?
There's so much happening in this space as people want to live in new ways as they live longer. And what I love about New York and other cities is we have something called NORCs. Have you heard of that? A NORC? Natural Occurring Retirement Community. You know, when you live in a building in New York City or other cities, you generally have people from all generations. I mean, in my building, we have babies and we have 90-year-olds. And what happens is you've got this intergenerational, mix of people. You're not ghettoized and everybody's the same age over, a certain age and complaining about their aches and pains. You know, you've got the city at your doorstep. It's a walking city. You have a lot of free activities you can do, museums and concerts in the park. And it's really one way of constructing this sort of living in place in an apartment building, let's say in New York or in other urban areas. But this idea of co-housing, there are now real estate developers who are creating what I'll call the intergenerational housing complex, as opposed to going and living in a 55-plus community, in a gated community in suburban America, where you're kind of isolated. Some people may have that choice, but I personally think that we need more intergenerational contact. What these developers are doing is creating communities where if you choose to live in this mini neighborhood that is, call it child-free, that's great, but then you have access to all of these other things that are in the community center, in activities that are happening where you're coalescing.
And you don't feel old and forgotten.
Exactly. And Arizona State University has an amazing model. It's called Mirabella. It's an apartment building that the university has actually built on grounds that they own. The average person is around 70-ish who lives there, but guess what? They get a student ID to Arizona State, and they get to use the library and the fitness center and go to events. They're a part of the community, but they live, in a separate unit that allows them to have their independence. But I think it's really important for us to have the access. And I think there's a lot of this happening now in America and lots outside of America and Asia in particular.
So, Michael Clinton,
Yes, sir.
This interview has aged appropriately. And I have a question for you.
Please.
And the question is there a fountain of youth, and are we on the verge of finding it?
There's no magic pill. There's
No magic pill.
It's the core protocols that we just talked about. that are the fundamentals, that are going to give us the health span that we all want. Listen, some people, they say, well, I don't want to live to be 100, and that's great, but you want a great quality of life for however long you live. And the other piece of that is you have your lifestyle factors, and on the other side, you have all these incredible diagnostics now that allow you to track and understand, getting something early before it becomes a health issue. So those are the elements. There's no magic pill.
No magic pill.
And I don't think, I certainly don't know if there ever will be. Who knows? But certainly not on the immediate horizon.
But we'll keep looking.
We'll keep looking.
Michael Clinton, thank you so much for coming by.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations. Meanwhile, download the CUNY TV app so you can enjoy our show and other marvelous shows on this network. And I am Jim Zirin. Take care, be well, age gracefully, and all the best.